Hello, everybody. Okay, so I'm not sure if anybody's going to be interested in this, but when I did previous rig workshop stuff, setting up my OSW and doing some other projects, people actually seem to tune in. So we'll see how it goes. What I have is a Momo 27c steering wheel that I got secondhand off a fellow on the forums. And I wanted to set it up to be exactly like the Pro Mazda that we have in iRacing. So I could get the paddles and the electronics and everything just fine, but I couldn't find a good source or pre-made solution for the buttons. So what I ended up doing was making a design of my own using Autodesk Inventor. It's a software package that my son was using in his high school engineering class. And he taught me the fundamentals of how to use it. So I basically used that to make the layout for the way I wanted the button panel to be, and thought about having friends of mine or people I know with 3D printers make one or send it to Shapeways or something like that. But talking to folk, it really seemed like, since it's just a flat piece, doing it as a laser cut with a piece of acrylic seemed to be the best solution. So that's what we did, and it works great. I mean, the acrylic is nice and strong. It holds the buttons exactly the way that you would want. Yeah, so it's great. I was very happy. It does look just like the Pro Mazda that we have in iRacing. And the paddle shifters and everything are fancy from Asher Racing. They're really nice magnetic action, and they feel great. But there were a couple things when I put it together the first time that I kind of knew were not ideal and that were going to sort of come back and get me. And indeed, in practice, I guess my frustration is that the paddles are too far away. I have to like really extend my fingers to get them. They're also a little too far out. This is a really narrow, I think it's a 270 millimeter rim. So it seems like I'm sort of reaching out and around to get to the paddles. So I want to rebuild it. And I think I figured out some ways to do it that are better than the way I originally set it up. So we'll see. One of the things is on the inside, there's the Leo Bodnar joystick controller that takes all the button inputs and stuff like that and converts them to USB. So the way that that's set up, it has header pins, and there's not very much clearance from the top of the header to where the these extensions are what Martin Asher supplies with the shifters and the mounting plate for them. And that seems like it would be a better distance. I ended up using these couplers to sort of have one screw that comes from the wheel side into that, and then another screw that comes from the back through the quick release and into the coupler as well. So what I want to do is see if I can get it so that it just uses the coupler and doesn't have, or just use the spacer without the coupler. And I've come up with a clever solution, I think, for having the wires go perpendicular to the control board rather than straight out, and that might help it. So we're going to do this as an experiment. I don't know whether anybody's going to tune in to the live stream or not, so I'm just going to pretend there's lots of viewers and take it from there. So let's switch something over here. That updated. And yeah, so I'm going to do a quick little test here on my iPad to see if the stream is showing up properly. Okay, so does look like things are there. Okay, so does look like things are there. Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I liked about the way I set it up originally is that this front panel and the steering wheel come off independently from everything else. So what I can do is loosen up the screws on there. One of the fun things about having magnetic shifters is they pick up all the tools and parts that are metal. Okay, so inside we have the Leo Bodnar controller, and it's got the connectors that come off in two different header blocks. So I think for now, I'm trying to wonder what the best order of operations is as far as the things that I want to accomplish. I think just taking it apart and disconnecting everything is going to be the best initial. So there's the button plate with the custom buttons. These are the shifters. Hey, Prisma. Welcome to the stream, man. Well, I built parts of it myself. The wheel, obviously, is a Momo steering wheel. The part that I did as like a custom piece is this button plate. I wanted to have it be just like the Pro Mazda steering wheel. So I couldn't find a off-the-shelf button plate or anything that looked similar. So I designed this myself using Autodesk Inventor. It's a program my son is actually learning to use in his high school engineering class. So he showed me the basics of how to do a simple drawing layout for it. So it works great as far as it fits on, bolts through the quick release and everything. And the buttons are fine. I actually found the buttons themselves at Fry's, and they seem to be, just fine as far as momentary switches. The action's great and everything. But the primary problem that I have is that these are Martin Asher shifters, which are great. I mean, they're really high quality. The action's super nice. But the problem is that when it's fully assembled, and the reason I'm redoing it today, is that I feel like the paddles are too far away. And they're also a little bit too far out. The shifters themselves are, gosh, I want to say, let's check actually. Let's take a look. Here, if I switch this, we can go to the PC and then browser. Okay, hopefully that's showing up on the stream. So the shifters are from Asher Racing. And like I said, they're excellent quality. And what I got from Martin is a mounting plate and the two shifters individually. So the shifters themselves are here. So I guess in euros they're 125 to 158 depending on the options that you get. Hey Hyacey, welcome to the stream, man. I'm rebuilding it because I feel like, and especially in the 12-hour race yesterday, the paddles are too far away and they're too far to the sides. So that was one reason that I want to redo it. And I've also had a lot of thoughts and stuff about how I did the original construction and stuff. But just to answer Prisma's question, the way I got them was with the Formula Short paddles and the button plate mounting kit, and that comes out to 130 euros. The electronics that I'm using are from Leo Bodnar, and that's the, let's see, it's this one here, the 12-bit joystick controller. I don't really need it as a joystick controller since all I have are the buttons, but these aren't that expensive, 25 euros or pounds, I guess. But yeah, it was the 12-hour race was actually a lot of fun. So let's go back here to the workshop. So like I said, when I originally constructed it, I had to add these extra standoffs to make it so that there was room inside for the electronics and the way I had the wires and stuff going through. But I've had some thoughts about how I can change the way that works. So my goal in today's workshop is to eliminate the need for the extra standoffs and make it so that it just comes through the spacers and stuff that Martin Asher provides. So I'm super happy with my custom part, the button plate itself. That's excellent. And yeah, so the first thing that I want to see is if there is actually room for the paddles to come in with the way the quick release and everything mounts. The way Martin provides it, you get 3 holes. 2 have to go through for the shifter itself. So you can put it on the outside, you could put it on the inside, but I want to see if there's actually room to put it one more in and see if that goes. Well, what I came up with for the standoffs are actually right angle standoff parts. So, and you could just do it and solder them. I mean, that would probably be the better solution, but I wanted to keep it modular and make it so that I could change things around. So what I got from DigiKey were a collection of different standoff components so that basically you could put this onto the joystick board and then have the wires go in at a 90-degree angle with the connectors on them so that, you know, for example, if you're wiring the shifter in, you know, it goes on like that. So we'll see. I don't know if they're going to work or not. But like I said, probably the real solution would be just to solder them on. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just see if mechanically there's room for the shifters to come in. But the problem is that I'm going to be using the hole that the wires originally came through. Yeah, having them come loose during racing would be the worst. Okay. So the hole almost matches up. Problem seems to be if I want to have it square. Looks like if I put it slightly at an angle, it would fit certainly. That's not ideal. And part of my other goal was to potentially minimize the need for the other spacers on the backside. Okay, so you can see here with the hole lined up so that it goes through, it is slightly at an angle. I don't know if that's a deal breaker or not. I will have to make a little bit of a modification in the carbon fiber to have the hole there. Let me try it on the other side, because that one has a different spacing for like the way the wires come through. So that might actually free up on the other side. Let's try both of them. So let's put the wheel back on the front and just see how they feel in that position. Would it not be better for the shifter plate itself to move inward and do true holes on each? Yeah, I was kind of seeing if I could get away with just using it the way that it is, but that might not be realistic. You know, I don't think I really mind the angle too much, but it's not consistent on both sides. So let me see what's up with that. Sweet, you're gonna go take an OSW test drive. Do you know which configuration they have? Is it the small midge, the large midge, which controller, and that sort of thing? That's good, actually. I did a lot of research before I bought mine. And everybody I talked to said theirs was the best. People with the large midge said that was the best. People with the small midge said that was the best. But the guy that I ended up buying it from, Tomo, who runs the Sim Racing Bay, basically he explained that if he was going to buy one, he would go with the small for himself, and that, you know, the larger one does have more mechanical inertia than the small one, but you can add a heavier wheel or you know, damping in the configuration to make it so that the small feels the same damping as the large. And the reality is, you're never, I mean, most people are never going to need the power of the large one, and I honestly think that's true. You know, the small is still super powerful. It's hard to really imagine wanting more strength. And the way I've been setting mine up, recently I've sort of changed philosophies about it, and I think I like the results. But what I'm doing is setting it so that iRacing sets the Newton meters in the game that it thinks are appropriate just below clipping. There's like a little auto tune you can do in the graphics settings black box. And with that, it seems like iRacing's giving the full waveform signal that it wants, and then adjusting the strength as just the power percentage in the SimuCube controller. And I think that does a better end result, just as far as making it feel, you know, iRacing is giving the whole signal that it wants, and the SimuCube is just matching the power output so that it's, you know, within the range you like. But sort of like the iRacing waveform is kind of like an audio signal, and then you're using the gain or amplification in the SimuCube to turn it up and down. Rather than setting, a lot of people set it so that the SimuCube is at 100%, and then you adjust the Newton meters in iRacing up and down to get it so it's the sort of strength feel you like. But I kind of feel like that's either compressing or expanding the waveform from iRacing and adding distortion. So I kind of am pretty happy with the way that I've been adjusting it. And it also makes it so it's easier to have you know, one value in the SimuCube that goes across all of the cars and stuff. Because there are differences, certainly, in the way the vehicles themselves feel. Okay. So the radical races in week 13 still count against like safety rating? I've really enjoyed that car, but it seems like so few of the regular season races go official, that I've never really been that enthusiastic about jumping into it during the main season. Okay, so that actually does seem like it lines up pretty well. If I do it this way, I am going to have to make a modification with the Dremel or whatever to move this middle hole slightly over to the side, and probably end up getting different hardware. The screws that Asher provides are nice, tapered, and the holes are countersunk, so that when they go through, they're totally flush. But if this results in a better position for my driving ergonomics, I'm totally fine with modifying the design. So they're doing a different track every day, or is it one track all week? Okay, so I think that actually is the best compromise. Lets me keep the orientation totally straight. They're as close in to the quick release mounts as seems to make sense. But I will have to modify those holes. I guess the alternative would be to go with completely new holes. Okay, move on to another problem first, and I'll just sort of think about whether I want to handle that way or not. Imola, Interlagos, Brands Hatch, Monza, Littleton Park, Watkins Glen, Montreal. Those are all awesome tracks. what have you looked at the actual second season? I have not really had time to check out the LMP1. I was going to, but the practicing and stuff for the Sebring event kind of got in the way. Have you been driving it at all? Oh, practice sessions with the Porsche. Yeah, that's the one I chose. Four seconds off pace. Something must be wrong. Oops. By the way, how's the audio and stuff? Are you picking up too much noise from around and birds and stuff outside, or is it reasonably good? I really didn't have a chance to check that kind of thing very much before I started the stream. Okay, good. It's actually using the microphone in the webcam that I've mounted over the table here. So I hoped that would be close enough to pick up my voice without too much extra stuff, and I figured it was a webcam microphone that was already sort of designed for that use. I'm effectively using all the electronics and stuff that I normally put in my car for the autocross streams, and just sort of repurposed it. Bird! Yeah, we have a lot of happy birds in my neighborhood. Okay, so this is the Bushvig Q1R quick release. It's another awesome component. Okay, so I should probably heat up my desoldering iron because that's the next thing I'm going to be doing. Is removing the connection from when I got this board. It's the Leo Bodnar joystick board. It had the conventional USB B port on it, but I didn't want to use that. And so I ended up desoldering it and soldering on the connectors that came through on the USB. So the USB cable that you get from Martin Asher with the kit is a really nice high quality coiled USB, a standard A end, and then it has these two terminals that are the same as the normal header. So what I ended up doing was pushing those through the holes on the board and soldering them. But I'd really rather not have it soldered at all. I prefer to have it be modular. So what I ended up getting from DigiKey were these 4 connector headers that are like that. So basically you can have the two the connectors go in, and then the USB cable can actually connect through its wires and stuff onto those ends, making it nice and modular. And again, I like the right angle header approach so that the USB is going straight in rather than perpendicular to the board. So we'll try that and see if it works well. But to do that, I got to plug in my desoldering iron. Let it heat up. No, I'm not scared of them becoming loose because the way this cable assembly works, when you cinch this down, it actually clamps on the cable pretty tight. So right now I have it come up and over and it's really kind of ugly the way it's going through here. But with the new assembly, it'll be oriented the other way around. So the cable will come up, do a right angle. And no, I'm totally comfortable that the way this cinch works. Any tug on the coiled side is going to be completely anchored. No, I don't think so. I mean, the way the headers go in, it's pretty solid. Okay, so I did a pretty crap job when I soldered these on originally, so I'm hoping that it won't take very much to get them loose again. One's loose. Okay, take it easy, Heisey. Thanks for checking out the stream. And the other one came out. Excellent. Hey, Dave. How's it going, man? Okay, so I think that's going to work really well. I like this 90-degree connector for the USB. It makes it so that the wires coming in can be in alignment with the general orientation of the board, as opposed to perpendicular sticking straight up the way I had it before. So there's two primary components. This is the main part of the, oh, I'm sorry, your team didn't have a good race, man. Sweet. Which team were you on? I didn't see your name in the standings ever, but I wasn't really looking that much at the relative. Which team were you on? So one side of this is power, it's red and black, and the other is white and green. Oh, I didn't realize. So were you on Seth's team? Was he driving too? I did recognize his name, I think. Were you guys GTE or GT3? I think you were GTE, right? So red on top and then black. And then on the other side, green on the bottom and white on the top. Sweet. I think there was a long time where we were like 12th or 13th and you guys were the car ahead, but you were like 3 laps ahead. I don't know. I crashed our car early on in the race. It was during, I think, the second stint of the race. There's on the front straight, there's the wall, and there's a little indentation that comes up. And I was too focused on the cars downfield and clipped that wall. I mean, I was driving next to a flat wall and still managed to wreck the car. So that was super embarrassing and frustrating, and it took like a 25-minute repair. You know, we ended up at the very back of the pack and spent the rest of the race catching up. But we actually did, I mean, remarkably well, I think, for having that far back to come. Yeah, we ended up 12th position. So I was pretty proud. And I think our general performance after the wreck was admirable. So I think if we hadn't had that catastrophe, we might have actually been contenders, you know, certainly for a much better position. But hey, K-Mains. So nothing was wrong, and I really I mean, the wheel itself is awesome, and I like it very much. It's super cool because it's so light, especially compared to the one I was using before. And the button plate that I made that holds the buttons and stuff is just like the way it is in the Pro Mazda. And these little buttons that I got at Fry's, the action feels really good, and that's wonderful too. So when it's assembled, you know, it looks great, it feels good, but the primary thing that I'm trying to solve today in my rebuild is these are the Martin Asher Motorsports paddle shifts, which are great. I mean, the magnetic action in them and stuff feels really good. They're really high quality. They're great. But when it's all put together the way that I had it constructed originally, they're too far back. And I sort of realized that yesterday in the 12-hour race after a lot of... I didn't fab this plate, but I did fab the button plate. Originally, I did it as a design in Autodesk Inventor, thinking that I would 3D print it. But a bunch of friends who are sort of more in the makerspace than I am said, hey, if it's just flat, laser cut it. So one of the buddies that I have at work has a laser cutter and was able to cut this piece out of 3mm acrylic in about 2 minutes. And it's perfect. I mean, it matches, you know, down to sub-millimeter accuracy the design that I made in Inventor. So it's like the way the buttons and stuff fit into place is perfect. I mean, I measured it with a little micrometer and stuff and did my design, you know, down to, I think, within 1/10 of a millimeter, just, you know, because it seemed like the precision was there. And yeah, the laser cut is amazing. So my goal today is to reassemble things and try and get it, if possible, so that the paddles are closer in and closer to the rim itself. So yeah, that's the primary goal for today. And I also had some other ways that when I did the original assembly, like I think right before you got here, I desoldered the way that I had the pins going into the Bodnar USB board. But instead of that, what I'm doing now is using a little right angle header rather than you know, straight up header. So having that on the board lets me use the same plugs that you get from Martin, which, you know, are nice because I can disassemble it if I want. The way that it was before, the way it was soldered through, I would have to desoldered if I wanted to take things apart. So now with this construction, I'm totally confident that it'll fit, and be nice and snug and not have any movement or connection issues. But I like the fact that it's, a right angle connector on the board. So that was my first improvement for today. So that's so far so good as far as that goes. And the next one that I'm still sort of on the fence about is if I really do want to get aggressive at moving the paddles inward, because the way the mounting plate comes, it has 3 sets of holes, and then this third one is actually for wiring to come through. And if I sort of piggyback on that hole and I go and I modify it with a little Dremel work, I can make another position there. But I'm not, I don't know, I'm sort of debating in my mind whether I want to put it under the Dremel or not. And I'm also wondering if I have similar hardware, because part of the other deal is the way that Martin does the plate. It's all really nice with countersunk screws, and I don't have the equipment to do that. So if I do it, I'm probably going to switch to flat screws. I'm kind of curious if these are 1.5 millimeter on the plate. Which they are not. I'm going to go get my micrometer. I'll be right back. Okay, and I also got the Dremel tool in case I decide I do want to modify the plate. Chlorine gas? Okay, I'll be really careful. Like enough chlorine gas to actually hurt a person? It's in the epoxy. Interesting. I did not know that. Well, usually my Dremel skills are pretty strong, so I tend to be quick. If I do need to Dremel anything, I'll actually step outside. I don't want to get carbon fiber particles and stuff here. This is our guest house. And it seemed like it'd be a nice workspace to set up. Most of the time I do these kind of things in our garage. But that's interesting that you say that, because somebody I was talking to is trying to work out a way to laser cut the carbon fiber. Seems like that would be a recipe for disaster if it produced a whole lot of chlorine gas. Yeah, these paddles really are very nice. Let me show you. Somebody else was asking earlier. We went to the web page for them. So that's the joystick controller that I'm using. The paddles themselves are from Asher Racing. They're 130 pounds, or euros, sorry. But really, really nice. And what I ended up getting was those paddles, and then he also sells this mounting plate, which is what we're obviously using right here. And the mounting plate I thought was actually pretty reasonable, 34 pounds, or euros. Sorry, I keep saying pounds. European money, you know. Use a water jet. Okay. So in a perfect world, I think I would have it mounted here, but the problem is that there's insufficient clearance now. Yeah, for the Q1R just does not fit, even if I get the wires out of the way. There's just not enough space for the Q1R to fit on there. Which is unfortunate, because it would be nice to use one of the existing holes and just make a modification on the other side. Yeah, like I said, I can't complain about the paddle shifters themselves. The action feels great. I don't think I've ever had any issues with double shifts or switch bounce or any problems like that. Yeah, I've seen that he sells like another set that are actually weaker. But I've also heard about people stacking the magnets so you can, increase the force. Okay, before I go modify the board, I want to check one other thing. I got some screws for mounting the electronics, and I want to find out if they really match the countersink or not. And they do, so that's nice. So that'll be nice and flush, which means I could conceivably get away from having to have the spacers on the other side. The way I originally mounted the board used these little screws, but they didn't obviously match the countersink that was already done into the board. So with that, I couldn't have the Q1R flush mounted to the plate. I haven't really. I've seen some. I've seen that they exist, but I haven't really. Are they good? Sim Racing Garage. Okay, so I'm going to step outside for a moment and make a 2 mm adjustment on each of these holes with the Dremel. I'll be right back. Okay, I don't believe I exposed myself to harmful levels of chlorine gas. Let's see if this works. Or if I need to be more aggressive. Yeah, it looks like I do need about 0.5 mm more. Okay, be right back again. Okay, so I don't want to take off any more material than I need to, but I think this will be good. Let's check. But I do kind of feel like I should go to the hardware store and get some proper screws. Yeah, I think I do need to take just a little bit more. Okay, pretty happy with that. So yeah, I think as far as primary goal of getting them a little more inward, that's going to be great. So far, so good, Dave. Okay, so next up is going to be finding a better orientation and placement for the electronics. So the way I did it last time, I ended up having the USB connector at the top, but I think it'll be better this way. I also have some really nice little nylon standoffs so that the circuit board isn't directly, in contact with the carbon fiber. So let's see which size. I got an assortment at the hardware store. So I think these will probably be fine. What's nice is that the taper matches the countersink, so they're completely flush. Actually, before I get too far into that, let's just double check and make sure that the Q1R has clearance. So that would be really sad to get too far down. Look at that. Perfect. So now the nice thing is that the Q1R can go directly onto the plate if I want, or I can still have the standoffs. Yeah, perfect. Now there's good clearance for the board, plenty of thread on the nut. Okay. Much happier about that mount for the circuit board than I had before. Okay, now let's see how the placement of the USB connectors actually comes through. Okay, so it's red on top and white on top. Okay. Awesome. Totally snug. So I love the way this cable clamp cinches down on the insulation. Makes it so that any tug that's going to come from this side is totally absorbed by the brad. These wires can be nice and relaxed onto there. So. Okay, so the next thing that I was going to experiment with is, this is the Bodnar joystick board, and you can just wire your connections or use headers and stuff to go onto the pins the way they are. But you can also use this little modular board that he has. The way that the button inputs work for the just digital stuff is as columns and rows. And if you use diodes to split them out, you can actually have it wired directly into 32 individual inputs. So the way this fits on, it has 12 pins that go onto the columns and rows. And now you get the additional header stuff up there, so that each one of those pins is an individual input. The way that you do it on the other ones is you do signal to either a column or row, and then the other line for the momentary switch going to ground. I did get these much longer bolt or screw, thinking that I would go through that way. I'm not sure I have enough screws to make a nice, double nut kind of mount on both sides. but I could probably do one. So let's actually experiment with that. Well, before I do that, I want to see what the clearance is like inside using the standard spacer. So yeah, if I go with that, there's no way that the board will fit. So let me do a quick space test and see how it feels having the wheel mounted to the plate with just, oops, sorry about that, guys. I'm sure that was loud. Hey Baggins, welcome to the stream, man. So I'm rebuilding a custom wheel that I put together last month. It's a Momo 27 steering rim that's identical to what we have in the Pro Mazda. But I wanted to set it so that the paddles were closer and more inset than the original construction that I had. So yeah, I think this is actually going to be really good. We modified mounting holes for the paddle shifters so that they could come a little bit more inward. And now they definitely feel like they're better placement for my fingers on it. There's still plenty of room when I'm gripping so that I don't feel like my knuckles or anything are hitting the paddles. So yeah. The one part that I did do that was a total custom piece is this little mounting bracket for the buttons themselves. So this was a design that I did in Acrobat, or I'm sorry, Autodesk Inventor, and had a friend of mine laser cut the piece of acrylic. So that holds the buttons and stuff, and it mounts right on in the same position as we have on the Pro Mazda in the game. So these are the Asher Racing shifters, and they're great. The magnetic action is really good. The switches seem like they're super high quality. Actually, I can show you real quick the information and stuff on them. So this is the Asher Racing website. The button plate that I'm using is this one right here, and the paddles themselves are these guys. So they're not inexpensive, but I think it's one of those things where you kind of get what you pay for in terms of the quality of the way they work. So, and what I'm doing right now is setting up. This is the electronics board that I'm using. It's the Leo Bodnar 12-bit. So the challenge at this point is going to be to get it so that I can get the wires that I need going through and having enough clearance here for basically the connectors and the headers on the USB board. When I did it originally, I had the spacers plus these couplers, and it felt like the reach was just a little bit too far as like how far I had to extend my fingers to you know, actuate the paddles. So part of my goal for today was to see if I could minimize that and just use the spacers that Martin provides for the shifters. And it looks like I might be able to do it. Trying to think about whether I do want to flush mount the... You know, I don't think I do. I think I do want to still have the little spacers like that before the Q1Rs interfaced. So wiring the buttons that way, I think they're just 1 and 2. Let's just double check real quick. Yeah, they should just be switches 1 and 2. Okay, so got a USB cable. Connect up the board, say a little prayer. Setting up device. Ready to use. Okay, so now I should be able to go to like the Joy CPL. And there it shows. Okay, so, yep. Good news is I didn't fry anything with the soldering job. Buttons 1 and 2 work as intended. Yeah, I think I saw that in the product listing. So this one, the load cell interface. Although I don't see like 32 buttons though. Maybe there's a different one. Hold on. Load still joystick controller. Okay, so it's probably this one. Yeah, the one above it. Like you said. So what I did was I asked them to send me the button box that I'm using, but without, or the board that I'm using, but without the USB connector mounted to it. And so that way I could solder my own right angle header on and use the cable the way that it comes from Martin Asher to just go directly into that as a header, as opposed to having to do anything with a conventional USB controller. Hey, D Pickle, welcome to the stream, man. Things are good. I'm just playing with stuff a little bit, trying to see if I can get it so that I've already succeeded in making it so that the paddles are closer inward than the original construction. I did have to modify my mounting plate a little bit for that, but just a few seconds on the Dremel seemed to do the trick to change, to exaggerate one of the hole openings that was already there, but get it so that I could mount them close enough, but that there's still room for the Q1R to fit. So success on that. And now what I'm doing is experimenting to see if I can have clearance for the way that the headers and stuff that I'm using on the button connectors going into the control board go, and get away with just using these spacers. The way that I did the construction originally had these spacers plus these coupling standoffs. And what I don't know, my frustration was that it seemed like the distance I was having to reach to get the paddles was a little bit further than I wanted. So if I can get away with just having, the distance here, I think I'm going to be happier. actually. Yeah, I think that's going to be great. So let me test just using the buttons for the paddles and not wiring up everything. Do a little quick space test and see. And we'll do everything. We'll put the Q1R on the back and stuff, but I do have some alternative hardware I want to experiment with. Let's see. Hey, good about the digital voice engineer. So I set it up so that you can tell voice attack not to listen all the time unless you prefix with a specific command. So for mine, I use pitgirl, but the other alternative is to set it up so that it has a push to talk button. And I don't know if your setup allows for that, but I like just being able to ask her questions and get the feedback I need. Okay, so yeah, these bolts with this configuration are not going to be quite long enough to go through everything plus the quick release. So let me see if I've already got on hand the hardware that'll work. Yeah, you can get all of them without any headers from Bodnar and stuff, or you can ask them to do custom stuff. So like when I bought mine, I got the header-less version, but asked them to install the Whoosy, the main headers, but not the USB. Okay, so I think this might be the proper length. I just use the, there's like two voices that you can use within the Windows text-to-speech engine. There's a male voice and a female voice, and that's just free. So I didn't pay for an extra voice or not. The ones you pay for, I think, certainly do sound better. But Pitgirl and I already have a relationship, so, you know, I'm not that enthusiastic about replacing her right away. Hmm. It's a good, solid working relationship. I think Pickerel and I have an understanding. And I've heard from other people that the crew chief does let you do voice commands and stuff. Do you know if it does like the same set of basically what I require is being able to tell it or ask it how much fuel I need, and be able to get a specific fuel input so that when I'm coming into the pits I don't have to fumble with the keyboard and the mouse. Okay, I think that's definitely an improvement over what I had before. Only question is whether I can get away with... I'm trying to decide if I want to flush mount the Q1R to the back of the plate or use the standoffs. Part of me feels like it would be a more solid, just direct connection to have it flush. I think that is the direction I'm going to go with it. Yeah, it does feel. I mean, the action on the shifters is really solid. What does SODE stand for? Do you know? Well, if you go to the website, you can get like there's a little template that you can download that has the exact dimensions and stuff. So you can like print it out on a piece of paper and test to see. Okay. I've definitely got a loose connection, and I'm glad I found it now. I can still take everything apart super easy. Hey, Eagleizer. Welcome to stream, man. So tonight's project was to sort of take apart and rebuild the Momo steering wheel that I put together last month. It's effectively identical to what we have in the Pro Mazda in iRacing, and I'm really happy with it. I built a little button box or a button plate that matches what we have in the game. But I was frustrated by a few sort of ergonomic issues with the placement of the paddles, the proportion of the distance and stuff away from the rim. So tonight's exercises were about trying to improve some of those aspects and redo some of the wiring onto the control board. So that's what we're doing. And it's funny because the magnets on the paddles are super strong, and they keep picking up all the little screws and nuts and bolts and stuff that I have in my workspace. I wouldn't be surprised if when I'm done, I'll end up with an extra piece or two just stuck on. Actually, let me switch this back so you guys can see. So I thought I had done a solid job when I soldered this in, but apparently not quite solid enough. Okay, let me warm up the soldering iron. Hey Dave, welcome to stream, man. Nothing bad happened. It's just sort of, I guess, construction 2.0. I built this rim and everything last month, and fundamentally, I'm super happy. I like the actual ergonomics of the rim. The grip is fantastic. It's super lightweight, so I'm really happy about that. This is the little custom button plate and stuff that I made that holds the buttons the way I want. That's all great. But the problem, and it really did sort of come out for me yesterday during the 12-hour event, was the way I put it together originally. The paddles were basically this spacer plus this standoff away from my fingers, and both the distance to the paddles as well as how far out they were, really I thought I could improve on that. So the first thing that we've done tonight was to make a small modification to the Asher paddle mounting plate and make it so that it originally came with 3 holes and you could position it all the way out or in. And I modified it to add an additional hole, or slightly enlarge a hole that was already there, to make it so that I could mount them closer in, but still have just enough clearance for the Q1R on the back. So already, I think that feels better as far as having the paddle so that they're closer in and like that. And then my next goal is to redo the wiring with the Bodnar control board, so that what I've got is only the spacer, and I want to see if I can get away with just having the spacer for clearance without the extra standoff, and make it so that the paddles are that much closer to the actual rim. So nothing bad happened. I took everything apart and want to see if I can make some small adjustments to the way the construction's done, and put it back together a way that makes it a little, improves the ergonomics of it slightly. So that's what we're doing. And I was putting the electronics and stuff back together and had it connected to the PC. So when I was doing that and just handling it, I was hearing the disconnect. So I'm really glad that I got that early. When I soldered, I did I guess one of the other mods that I was doing was, rather than have the USB connector be a standard USB connector, I went with this little right angle header interface, so that the pins go in through the board, solder on the other side, and the way the Asher kit comes for his USB thing, the coiled USB cable that he provides has standard USB on one side and Pedder interface pins on the other. So going with the 90-degree header makes it so that I can just plug the pins from the USB directly into the board, but not at a, basically in alignment with the orientation of the board so that, it's nice and straight in. So that's what I'm experimenting with. But like I said, there is a loose connection. I think I can see it in terms of which pin isn't quite soldered properly. So we're going to loosen that up and see if we can get a better connection, because it would suck to go through the whole exercise of putting everything back together and then still have a loose connection. Oh, hey, Rod. So you're saying what you did for your Asher shifters on your Uni-Hub was to reverse the spacers on the shifter and got longer bolts so that the paddle itself was towards me and not going out. Okay, I think I see what you're talking about. So the paddle side was on the other side. I could see that, but I like having the smooth, because I actually, when I'm doing it, my fingers actually do often go all the way around to hit where the screws and stuff are. And I think if I had that other piece of carbon fiber there, I don't know. I'm not sure how that would feel. Because the other thing is, on that side, the holes aren't countersunk so that the screws wouldn't go completely flush the way that they do here. But I hear what you're saying. Okay, I can feel that the soldering iron has been heating up. Oh, I need to actually go get my solder. I'll be right back. I think that was the pin that actually had the gap. Feels more solid anyway. Let's test it out. Okay, yay. Capacitive input from my finger caused a signal on the joystick axis. At least I'm in the positive X rotation. Okay, well, the good news is the loose connection got fixed. So I'm super happy that I found that before I had everything reassembled, because that would have been a pain to have to take it all apart just for that. Okay, good. Yeah, I know it's disconnected because I just unplugged it. I wonder if I have enough. No, I didn't install a controller at all. And every time I plug it in, or I have two. This was the first one I did, which when it came, it had the USB connector, and I did an desolder to remove it, but I kind of munged it a little bit more than I'm happy with. So it's been working, but it's been sort of plaguing me in the back of my mind because when I was doing it, I used the wrong tool and had a metal screwdriver that I was using to sort of apply pressure to get it to come off, and I scratched a couple of the contacts. So this board is actually a second one that I had them send me. And I had them put the headers on for the buttons and stuff, but I had them leave off the USB so that I could solder on my old one. No, every time I plug it in, it shows up. I don't know if yours shows up the same way or not. When you connect it, It shows up as this, the BU8, I'm sorry, BU0836A interface. And I've never had to install a driver or anything. The first time you connect it to the computer, you get the little Windows status update saying that it's installing a driver, but I've never manually done it. When yours is connected, does it show up with the same? Ah, okay, so that's a different board. But what's the one? It looked like it was the same one that was used in the Cube controls. And it sounded like you were having trouble when you first got your RIM. Does it show up as the same controller, or does it have a different identifier? Hey, Zach. Welcome to the stream, man. So I'm looking for where my last little nylon washer went. Oh, here it is. Oops, that was the wrong screen. An over-tightened board. Okay, so it like had a stress fracture or something that was causing an intermittent connection? Hello, Connor.
Mother is fine, but dinner will be ready soon.
Dinner will be ready soon. I like how you preference that with mother's fine. You want to come around this side and say hello? My 11-year-old, everybody. What are we having for dinner?
Lasagna.
Lasagna, okay. I like how you preference that by saying mother's fine.
Mom told me to do that.
So that I wouldn't think I had to come running to help or anything? Okay. Now, I'll be right there. I want to get the board on, and then I will come in. It's just a little frustrating trying to get this little... There we go. Last nylon nut all the way on. Okay, well, that's good to know. I shouldn't over-tighten this one. But I like having the little nylon washers to provide a good, comfortable space so that none of the contacts are actually touching any of the carbon fiber underneath or anything. I don't think there's like a real conductive issue, but...
I'm frolicking in the background.
Connor is frolicking in the background. Did they do everything soldered onto the board, Rod? Okay, so it's transparent. Okay, so that's wired so that shift up is on pin 1 and shift down is on pin 2. Connect it back through. Okay, connect it in. Status. Okay, Joy. Buttons work. Controller works. It's no longer intermittent. That would have been really disappointing. Put it all back together and then have it periodically disconnect due to vibration or whatever. So nice and solid now. And pins are working. Yep, they are very nice paddles, I have to say. Okay, well, I'm being called to dinner, so I'm going to sign off for now.
Goodbye, random people of the internet.
Goodbye, random people of the internet. Okay, so I'll be back later, guys. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Drive safe. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.